Hey everybody, welcome back, and we're going to talk about the United Kingdom today, specifically around London. We have a guest that we've had on previously that showed us about his lifestyle in Baden-Baden, but he's doing what's known as a Schengen Shuffle. So when he's not in Germany, the way he's doing his life is he's spending it in the UK, in London. And so if you're looking at living in London, whether that's going to be your place to live as an expat, or if you're looking at doing the Schengen Shuffle, this video is going to be for you because we're going to talk about the cost of living.
A pet parent also.
Yeah, and so we're going to have the cost, whether or not, we'll talk about rentals from the standpoint of if you're going to live there versus also the cost of a short-term rental like an Airbnb if you want to stay for like a month or 3 months. So stick around, and we're going to turn it over to Scott, our basic American dad living in London.
Hi, Warren and Julie, and a big hello to your audience from London, England. It's wonderful to be with y'all again as we're slowly working our way around this part of the world. As a brief intro, I'm a single American dad to one daughter who says I act pretty basic much of the time, but we love to travel and we think non-basic or out the box. And that sort of thinking has led to her now doing grad school here in the UK. Well, I'm a 56-year-old retired police lieutenant with nothing better to do, and a long-time aviator with a passion for adventure. So our German Shepherd and I just couldn't let her have years of international fun without us. Your channel and group has educated and inspired us, so I'm honored to hopefully be contributing back something to your noble efforts. After spending a few months this summer on the continent, based in Germany but meandering around a bit, since September we've been on this island and have a long-term rental in North London. It's another very long story, complex logistics that we've discussed some in your group, and I'll be doing a future video on that in more detail. But we shipped our car ahead from the US and we maintain our home registration. There's reasons behind this approach, but it's all beyond the scope of this video. However, I will be touching briefly on the logistics of getting our dog over here and across different borders, as that may also be the desire of many of your viewers. Covering the cost of living in London, I'll refrain from getting bogged down in housing because there's just far too many variables in a giant city with 9 million people over 32 boroughs. Flats or townhouses, semi-detached or detached, different sizes, number of bedrooms, etc. If you want to stay in the middle of it all, Central London or Zone 1 on the transit map, this would be quite different in size and cost and more than one of the countless neighborhoods further out or even in a nearby town just outside of London. We're staying in the borough of Enfield, primarily for the vibe of our neighborhood, including a large park for our large dog, yet with the ease of getting anywhere via the tube or buses. But personally, I would not spend this much money on rent for many years to just hang out here.
So the rental market in London is kind of a little bit all over the board, depending on where you're going to live. But I think we've got some pretty good numbers on what we would be expecting people to be paying for rent in a realistic location that's
Right.
like not in a bad location. But what are we looking at for the rental in London?
Rental in London outside the city center would be about $2,100 a month. So that's a longer term basis. That's not going to be Airbnb. For your city center, you're going to be about $2,900 a month. Again, these are only one bedrooms. These are small. And for Airbnb, you're going to need to amp that up. It depends on the time of year. If we're talking about summer months, plan on $4,000.
Yeah, I was looking at the Airbnb map and put in basically a one bedroom with Wi-Fi, a washing machine, and looking in the areas that are going to be similar to what Scott's living in.
Yeah, the outside, the off season, outside of summer, you can find something $2,400, $2,500 a month, and that's US. So a little more affordable, but the UK is a splurge. And you got to think about it this way. What if you could do a home swap?
Yeah, so we do have our home in Montenegro, and we swap for different locations. We're in Tuscany at the moment. We did a 90-day swap here. We also swapped with Copenhagen. So, if you owned a home in London, maybe you swap for another location when you're not there. But you can be in London for 6 months without doing anything special, which is a really fantastic thing about being in the UK. So for Schengen Shuffle purposes, if you wanted to say spend 3 months in Portugal, go back for 6 months in London, and then go back to the Schengen and spend 3 more months in Spain, and then go back for 6 months, you can have a pretty solid life, basically living 2/3 of your life in the UK if you really, really wanted to.
Exactly.
So now let's go back and visit with Scott and get some more information from him.
Okay, so you can factor in your own coal rent cost, but what about everything else? That I can give you some figures on. Please pardon another quick disclaimer, but my daughter's daily expenses are very atypical as a student, though she does live at home with the pup and I. So we'll go with my personal spending times 2, plus routine household expenses for us both, which would give a good ballpark on what it costs 2 people to live here and do things around the city at least a few days a week. I'll be converting everything to dollars since most of your audience uses those, and it's about $1.25 per pound lately. And this will be for January 2025. We're well established here, so no transition expenses. Plus, it's been pretty chilly, so I wasn't going out every day. Our groceries and household items were $476, so roughly $100 a week, which is about what we spent back home. And most of our meals are included in that, of course. Otherwise, my dining out was $95 and my transportation was $47. But again, it was a very cold month, plus I didn't splurge on swanky meals this month. So for 2 people, that would have been $284 in dining and transportation, but I really need to stress that this is low end and frugal for London. Energy costs were the highest for this coldest month at $280. Average months across the whole year would be closer to $100 a month. So higher energy may kind of balance out the lower dining and travel that I did this month. Now I've got some good news for your wallet if you haven't heard about it already. London has some huge and world-class museums, and often the entry is $0. I'm a big history nerd, so my happy place is here at the British Museum. I'll indulge for several hours at a time, and you'll think I'm crazy, but I've gone 17 times since October and have one more visit to see it all. In-depth, but not exhaustive, of course. Knowing I go so often, I bought a membership for about $100 that covers a year. Gives me some perks and skipping the entry queue, but mainly I wanted to support this amazing museum. However, that's not required. My daughter likewise nerds out for hours at the Science Museum or Natural History Museum and several others. Again, admission at most is free, though donations are surely appreciated. So, in relative terms to where you're from and what you're used to, some things may cost more, but other things less. Overall, this January, London cost these 2 folks around $1,190 plus rent. Not bad, but I'd call that low end, perhaps even a bit boring due to the weather that I'm just not acclimated to. So up that a bit if you plan to be much more active, or will be indulging in some nicer restaurants, or want to take in some of London's famous excursions or guided tours or shows. Another key component of our plan here, of course with the hope it's not needed, is our health insurance. As a student here, my daughter Christina is covered by the NHS, National Health Service. We prepaid that for her entire course of studies, and it came out to $91 per month. But most of y'all won't be on a student visa here, so for that I'll defer to the best expert on insurance abroad, the guy who's taken excellent care of me personally, and that's our very own Warren here. He's probably putting up terms and rates as I speak, and you'll see how fantastic that is, far better than my premiums back in the US. But I want to add that while I have thankfully not needed to use this, he had also covered Christina while we were in the EU before she got on the NHS here. She did have some doctor visits and prescriptions during our time there, and Warren's company took outstanding care of everything, exactly as advertised, no headaches at all. So I highly recommend Warren to meet this need, because if you're like us, your U.S. provider would only cover some major emergency here, if at all.
Now, for those of you following Julie and I, you know we travel with our two dogs. These two have been to 4 continents. Katie, 30 countries. Arya, our Ecuador rescue, she's been to 29. It's always great to get new information from people that are traveling with their dogs, how they did it, their best practices. So let's go to Scott. He's got his story to tell about traveling with his much larger German Shepherd, much larger than Arya and Katie, obviously.
Now, I promise to say a bit about our German Shepherd, Merelda, and the logistics of her travel. First, a word of caution. Rules may change, so be sure to do thorough research and check with a local vet familiar with travel across borders. All of this in the US or EU or UK has strict time limits on the hoops that have to be jumped, so don't get surprised. That said, here's how it worked for us in 2024. Long before we left the U.S., our wonderful vet conferred with the USDA to confirm what we had researched and get official guidance to ultimately obtain the required health certificate. Thanks to all that prep, we experienced no problems at all leaving the U.S. Since we have a large dog needing to go into airlines cargo, we found Lufthansa to be the superior option. They have a climate-controlled pet cargo, plenty of veterinary staff, so as a result, they didn't have the ramp temperature restrictions that other airlines do. Once we got in the EU, since we were staying a while and had an address, not a hotel, we were able to get her an EU pet passport. This really streamlined future travels, not only around the EU, but also into the UK and back. And Merelda gets to flex that she's a European. Dogs are very welcome in many places over here, including restaurants, but we always check or ask first. She's having the time of her life with her pack, and that brings us joy too. She's also got an Instagram, Merelda on the Move. So is all of that worth it, and is London a good fit to you? If you're looking for an experience of living abroad without much of a language or culture barrier, and a big city international experience where nobody even bats an eye at foreigners, then perhaps London could work for you, or even be a stepping stone into other cultures near or far from here. With very few exceptions, the people here have been so friendly and welcoming to us, and outside of the tourist areas, they're very curious about why these Americans are living here, and they really enjoy hearing our stories while welcoming us in as good friends. I absolutely love their charm and wit. Conversations with them are utterly delightful, and I could go on for days about countless wonderful experiences that we've had here. But I'll turn it back over to you, Warren and Julie.
It's always good having Scott on here, getting a different perspective. Don't forget he does have his own YouTube channel, The Basic American Dad. But don't forget to subscribe here, give this video a like, and don't forget about our own Facebook group, Expats Slow Travel Nomad Network by Warren and Julie. If you're looking for international medical coverage, don't forget to go to our website, warrenjulietravel.com, and you can run some quotes there. Also other travel resources. And of course, you can email us at warrenjulietravel@gmail.com. And, this was a nice video. Scott, any last words?
Thank you again for the opportunity to have hopefully contributed something to your audience's interest in nomading, whether it's here or anywhere. The world is such a huge neighborhood, and not getting out to see it while you're young and healthy enough to is like staying locked in your little house. You're really missing out on a lot. But actually immersing and living in a place that sparks your interest, well, there's so much you can't get by merely visiting as a brief tourist. So happy travels and all the best to y'all.